Episode 12.
Hello.
Are you ready to start?
I'm ready to start. Let's do
All right. So this is episode 12, Chris. We don't have Brandy with us, but hey, it's you and me. This is the way it all started,
Like
right?
the old days.
That's right. That's right. So anyway, we have a really fun, slightly controversial topic, which is licensing. But in particular, that was Brandy that just messaged you. Let's see what she said. Go ahead. She said, go ahead and do it. She can't make it in time. Okay. So anyway, so licensing. I'm at my favorite coffee place the other day, Tim Hortons. Are we filming?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm at my favorite coffee place the other day, Tim Hortons, and I hear these people talking about licensing to have children, okay? And it's a heated debate with them, and there's probably 5 of them sitting around a table. They're various ages, which was kind of cool because there were some people in their, one girl was in her late teens, it appeared, a couple people in their 20s that looked like they were kind of newly married, late 20s. And then it looked like maybe the parents of those people because they were like 50s, 60s, something like that. So anyway, they're talking about licenses to have children. And of course, it got me thinking as I'm trying to get my work done, I'm thinking about licensing to have children. And it's really a fascinating topic because think about what licenses we have right now in states. And by the way, it's different state to state, but there are licenses. New York State, let's just look at New York. Handguns. Mm-hmm. My daughter Olivia and I are getting ready to go get our handgun permit. We need a license to own a handgun. You don't need a license to own a shotgun or a rifle, but you need a license to own a handgun. You need a license to drive a car. What licenses do you have in mind?
Well, you need a license to operate business. You need licenses.
That's right. There's a bunch of businesses in New York State that you need a license to operate. You need a liquor license, right?
License. You need a license to teach to. There's
Yeah.
things in a profession you need.
Right? You need a license to be a lawyer,
Yeah.
a license to be a stockbroker, a license to be a doctor. There are 33 states in the U.S. that require licenses to be a contractor. A general contractor needs a license. You need a license for marijuana in New York State. You need to have a marijuana license, right?
Right.
So real estate. Brandy's a real estate agent. I wish she was here for this because you need a license to be a real estate agent. So the reason you need these licenses is because it's mostly a safety issue, right? Mm-hmm. You can't have a gun if you don't know how to operate a gun. You shouldn't, right? It's dangerous. It's dangerous to you and it's dangerous to the public. You can't practice as a lawyer because you will be totally screwing your clients. They think they have representation, but they don't. My daughter Ella is a stockbroker, a financial advisor. She had to take a bunch of tests to get licenses like her Series 7 license and Series 66 license and things like that because they don't want people holding themselves out as financial experts and then we, the customers, have a chance of getting all of our money taken or lost. Even if they're not malicious, if they don't have the qualifications, they might not be able to manage our money properly, right?
Yeah.
For doctors, it's obvious, right? So it's all about, and liquor licenses, right? You need a license to sell liquor. I'm guessing that there's something to do with the state wants the money, but it's also something to do with being responsible in connection with the sale of liquor because you will lose your license if you violate certain rules, and that's your livelihood, right? Mm-hmm. And, of course, we know now that one of my friends, Chris, has a marijuana license, right? Same thing. He doesn't want to lose that thing. It took a long time to get that thing, so he's very careful to follow the rules. So the question is, what about children, right? You can't drive a car without a license, but you could have a child without a license.
Yeah.
What are you thinking?
I mean, it sounds logical to say that you need qualifications to raise kids.
Well, you certainly need qualifications to raise kids. Do you need a license to have kids? And of course, today the answer is no. And you've probably heard people say, and I heard this morning at Tim's, or maybe it was yesterday morning at Tim's. But anyway, the question was, one of the young people was saying that it's your natural right to have a child. Is it?
Not in this society, no.
Well, that's right. Not in society. Like if you're in a state of nature outside of society, have kids, raise kids, right? You got to pay for your kids. Well, once you get into society, now your decision to have kids impacts everyone else that's in the society, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the question is, can you, like, for example, can you afford it? right? One of the dad in this scenario was saying, yeah, you have a right to have children, but why should I have to pay for your children? In other words, taxpayers, because if you can't afford to pay for the kid, then somebody else has to pay for it because nothing's free in this world. Somebody pays for everything, right? If you're getting money from the government, that means somebody is giving you that money. And it's not the government, it's taxpayers. Yeah, the vehicle is the government, but it's taxpayers. So, and then the comeback was, yeah, but I should have the right to have a child because it's my body, it's my right. Yes, but then the other side is, what about obligations, right? Rights carry obligations. Like freedom of speech is a right, right? We have the freedom from having the government stop us from saying what we want to say, except for very narrow circumstances. But I would say that also carries an obligation to speak the truth and not create fake news and not deceive people and trick people, right? But it's an obligation that isn't punishable, right? If you don't do that, you can say whatever you want. And as long as you don't fall within those narrow parameters of things that you can't say, you can't be punished for it. So then go to a right to have a child. There's obligations too, right? I mean, you have to pay for your children, right? You have to raise your children.
To be there.
You have to be there because parenting, I'm not saying you have to be super parent, but you have to be competent. I read this book called The Gulag Archipelago by, I think it's Alexander Solzhenitsyn. And it was a really good book about a whole bunch of things, but it's basically the Gulag, the Soviet gulags, and how people would be put into these horrifying situations. And one thing that was fascinating was they would sometimes have children there without their parents, right?
By Stalin, right? By Stalin.
Yeah, Stalin. This was Stalin. He was huge on these these gulags. So you'd have children in these places, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old children, and your first thought is they are going to be victims, right? Because they're children. But it turned out that because they had no parental guidance, they became sociopaths, right? All about survival. And they became like packs of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds preying on old people. And they had no social, moral center, right? Because they don't have parenting. Now, that's an extreme example, but, when I was in the DA's office, I saw a ton of people in the criminal justice system that didn't have parenting, right? Dads would disappear. Mm-hmm. They're gone, right? So the child already has no dad. Moms face a number of situations. One, sometimes they're children themselves. I would see sometimes parents who were having kids at 13, 14, 15, 16 years old, their brains aren't even close to developed yet, right? Yeah. The human brain, the prefrontal cortex doesn't develop till you're like 24, which means yours just developed, Chris. So now you have no excuses.
I can feel it.
You feel more mature, right?
Yeah.
It's your judgment center, essentially. So if you're having a child at 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, even 23, your brain's not still developed. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't have them at 23. Of course, it's fine. But if you're 13, 14, 15, 16, you are not only at a disadvantage, but your children are at a huge disadvantage. And when I was in the DA's office, I'd see a ton of kids with very young moms, right? Mm-hmm. They were 16, arrested for stealing cars, arrested for robbery, arrested for all these crimes. And then you'd see their mom. You wouldn't see their dad. They were gone. Yeah. But you'd see their mom or their grandmothers. Grandmothers were a big part of keeping these people relatively stable. But the grandmothers were only they were under 50. They were 48 years old. The moms were only 13, 14 years older than the kids. They were only in their late 20s, right? So the question is, should they have children? Should there, if you're going to be in a situation where you have disappearing dads, young moms. Oh, and you also, by the way, have perfectly sincere moms and sometimes perfectly sincere dads who are working 2 jobs because they've just had bad circumstances in life, right? Mm-hmm. And at least in those cases, but still, if you have a single mom working 2 jobs because she's a dedicated parent, she can't raise the kids, right? It's a very challenging situation. So, didn't you tell me a great story about one of these actors or something that had he was really old?
So Al Pacino had a kid when he was 83.
Yeah. So imagine, you're 83 years old. How long do people live? I think the average lifespan in this country for men is 75 or something, right? So if you're 83, you're probably not going to survive more than another 7 or 8 years, which means your child will never have a dad.
Yeah.
Right? You're sentencing your child to being fatherless from age 8 or 9 on. And oh, by the way, if you're 83, I'm sure you're not that active, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, he was active, but
well, apparently he's active. Yeah, you're right. Apparently he's active, or he wouldn't have had the kid, right? Okay, I take that back. But once you get over 90, you're probably, yeah. So the question is, should Al Pacino have had to have a license to get that kid, and nobody would have agreed to give him a license, right?
Review.
A board review, yeah. It's kind of like once you reach a certain age,
Yeah.
you got to have a board review. We have to see, because, I read an article by the NIH that said not only is it bad that you have a kid at 83, but if you have children as a man, if you're the man having the kids, being involved in having the kids, and you're like over 50, the chances of mental illness for the children go like way up.
Yeah.
So now you're putting your children at risk of having mental illness because you want to have a kid at 60 years old, right? So not only won't you really be there for them as a dad, but it's going to be putting them in a position where they don't have mental health, right?
Yeah.
And my daughter Olivia was talking to me the other night, and she had a great point, which is when it comes to happiness, the number one thing might not be money. It might not even be physical fitness. It's mental fitness. Like if you're depressed, if you're going through depression, it sucks the joy out of your life, right?
Yeah.
If you have deep anxiety, it sucks the joy out of your life. It's almost like emotional fitness might be the number one thing to give you a fighting chance at happiness in life. And if you're an old dad, you can't guarantee that you're going to, first of all, I'm not saying anything's guaranteed in this world, but you can't even give your kids a fighting chance at that point. By the way, you mentioned Mick Jagger too, right?
Mick Jagger at 74.
74. He had a kid at 74.
Probably have another one. Who knows?
Yeah, right. Yeah, because he's only 74. Al was 83.
Yeah,
He's got time for like 6 more kids, right? 6 more kids who will have a potential emotional challenges because of having an older dad. And I'm not talking about because their dad's older, they're going to be like, fuck, this sucks. Just they're going to be passing on genetic information, which gives them a challenging emotional situation. But also, they won't have a dad because, you're 74 years old. By the time your kid's 13, you're ready to die yourself, right?
Yeah.
And, there's one other thing. My ex-wife, Nina, she had elderly parents. Her dad was 49, mom was 45, which isn't as old as Al Pacino and Mick Jagger. But she said that she always felt insecure about that for 2 reasons. One, she had the oldest parents of all of her friends. Like all of her friends had parents who were like, when they were in elementary school, her parents were like in their early 30s, and her parents were always much older. And that made her feel uncomfortable because whenever you're in like a different situation, you feel uncomfortable, right? But also she always thought they were going to die.
Yeah.
Because to a 5-year-old, 49 seems really old, right?
Yeah.
To a 45-year-old, 49 doesn't seem that old. But so, that's another thing. And I've seen a bunch of parents who have been I know, not a bunch, let me take that back, a few people who have been in their 60s and had children. And I just think maybe there's a license requirement.
Yeah. And, maybe, oh God, I'm just thinking about how do you prevent pregnancy? And it's just so easy to have a kid.
Well, in this Tim Hortons discussion, I heard the dad of this group saying that there's some kind of a device, and I couldn't exactly hear what he said. It's something like Nordplan or Neuroplan or something like that, where you insert under the skin, and it continues to distribute birth control for like 5 years.
Oh, okay.
And his point there was insert it in everybody at first of all, I don't know if it's safe. So ignoring that for the moment, some way to keep people from having children, then you have to earn your way out of it if it's going to be before 21.
Yeah.
So maybe the license requirement is under 21 and over 45.
Yeah. My friend said vasectomy.
Wait, but vasectomy though.
He's getting a vasectomy. I was like, oh my God. And he's like, well, you can always clip it back on. He said,
can you?
yeah, you can.
Yeah, but we don't want to give vasectomies to like 13-year-olds. But at the same time, we don't want to put that thing in 13-year-olds, right?
So you don't know what to do. I mean,
No, I don't know what to do. It's a fascinating discussion, though, because realistically, I think most people would agree that if you're under 21, it's not a good idea to have
it's not
kids.
a good idea.
Right?
It's just nervous.
It's not good for you. It's not good for the kid.
Yeah.
And, accidents happen, of course, but the license requirements would at least, first of all, I'm sure most of these are accidents, right? That happen before 21, which means you need technology. I don't know what that technology is, but a license requirement is an interesting concept. Certainly pre-21, post 45 or 40 or something like that, when you get into the risk zones. I'm guessing once you're like in your 20s, probably figure it out,
Yeah.
right?
Perhaps.
At least to reach the level of competence.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about great parenting because few of us are that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at least a level of competence where you can give your child a fighting chance,
Yeah.
right? So that you don't have a kid who's raised with no real support structure, either financially, emotionally, or even time. So look, you need a financial infrastructure, you need an emotional infrastructure. You need parents who care about you and they want to be parents. And 3, you need time, right? Ultimately, you need time with your kids, and your kids need time with their parents.
Yeah. It should be like a process, a submission of documents. Like I did this course.
Oh yeah,
Here's my
courses,
income.
training
Yeah,
programs, right?
Yeah.
So like, think about it. What if you need a parenting certificate? And by the way, this should apply to everybody.
Yeah.
At any age that you have children, you should, at least your first, right? At least your first, you should, to me, start ongoing training when they're in utero,
Yeah.
right? Soon as you're pregnant, you got your doctor, somebody knows you're pregnant, right? In 99% of the cases. So you should have, it seems to me, some kind of a referral, and then you get training videos, right? And you got to watch your training videos, take the tests. I have a training company, as you know.
Right, yeah.
Now, we don't train on parenting, we train on intellectual property fundamentals, but it's the same concept. If you're at a company, you need to understand intellectual property fundamentals in order to do your job. Right? So what we do is we provide training every month forever. So if you join XYZ company and you're one of my clients, we send you videos like not long, like 5 to 10 minutes, once a month, forever. Ongoing training so that you're always thinking about intellectual property so you can succeed in your job.
Yeah.
Now, think of parents, right? Ongoing training. You get a video once a month, maybe a video once a week, maybe a starter pack of like 10 videos that you have to start with to get the basics. And then until your kid is 21 or something, you're watching monthly videos and you're getting trained on important topics. The earlier, the better too. Like, think about it. So I just jotted down a few of these topics, right? You could have a training video on dealing with the common challenges that parents face with kids at various ages, right? Because believe me, there's experts all over, right? People have had kids. I'm probably a little bit of an expert just because I've raised 3 daughters, right? But there are experts that are really good at this. They know pretty much what's going to happen at different ages in the mainstream, right? Yeah. Most kids. Yeah. There's an expression called terrible twos, right? There's an expression called colicky babies, right? They're crying all the time. So how do you help parents deal with situations, right? We could have scenarios and solutions, right? They could be watching ongoing videos. If this happens, then this. And when your kid is like 13, all hell breaks loose.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, you probably were a kid who all hell broke loose.
I was challenging, yeah.
We all are, because your brain is changing. It's almost not even your fault, right? But you still have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Like you're growing up, you're probably doing things you shouldn't do at 13, 14, 15.
Rebelling, and then how do you deal with that as a dad? How do you deal with that as a mom? Most people are confused about that. They're just like, oh man, I just don't know why my son hates me.
Right. Exactly. And I've heard that question, especially from moms. I hear that a lot, which is my son or daughter hates me. And the reality is their brains are changing, right? So how do you deal with it, right? Yeah. And the parents could have scenarios. That's a video. Yeah. What do you do when you believe that your daughter or son hates you, right? what do? You know, let's get perspective. They could just be perspective videos, you know, just stay the course,
Yeah.
you know? And, you know, there's all kinds of parenting videos. But then the other thing is nutrition, right? Think about this. Nutrition and fitness for your children at a very young age, at a super young age, start training them on the importance of fitness and nutrition. I read this article about some kids in Japan. They polled kids, right, about what their favorite foods are. In Japan, these kids were saying rice and broccoli, right? 5-year-olds were saying this. In the US, they were saying Fruit Loops and Frosted Flakes.
Oh man.
Right? But because it's cultural, it's how you've raised them. And most people don't even know about nutrition issues. I never did, right?
Parents don't know.
Parents don't know.
The average
So how
person
can the
here-
average parent teach the average kid about nutrition when they don't understand that Frosted Flakes, which by the way taste great. I mean, they're awesome. In fact, maybe my favorite tasting food on the planet is Frosted Flakes, but they're awful for you, right? I mean, they're just terrible for you. So, but I've been eating those my whole life, and Brandy and I just started this nutrition program like 4 months ago, and I'm like, God, I can't believe what I've been eating.
Yeah.
But when I see kids that are like 7, 8, 9, 10, and they're not fit, you know, they're out of shape, it's too young to be not fit and out of shape. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't usually get better. As we get older, we get worse at that. But I'm thinking if parents had training videos, how to give your kids the right nutrition, right? And I'm not even saying like A students. I'm just saying C students, right? C level nutrition, C level fitness is way better than we've got going on now, you know?
So I help volunteer at this cat rescue place.
Cat rescue place.
So before you can adopt a cat, they look at your food. They're like-
Wait. They
So
look at the cat food?
They look at the cat food you have. And
Wait a second.
They're like, wait a minute.
Wait, they're worried about nutrition for
Just
cats.
worried about nutrition. If your cat food is cheap, that goes into the application process, and you might not get a kitten, even though they're
That's for nutrition for kittens.
Yeah.
And we don't have it for humans.
Yeah, I don't think we don't know.
Oh, and you know what else? I have friends who have adopted kids, and you have to jump through all kinds of hoops for adopting a child. But you jump through no hoops to have a child naturally,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
they're really grilling people. I know because my brother Mike adopted 2 kids, and they really grilled them on their fitness to be adoptive parents, you know?
They should.
Yeah, as they should, but we don't have that for
don't have-
natural
yeah, I see,
childbirth.
yeah.
But more in the training program. Another thing is financial literacy. Most adults are not financially literate in this country. Most, maybe the world, but certainly not this country. I talk to some parents my age, I'm 61, people in my age group, they don't even know what the rule of 72 is, right? They don't even know what really the S&P 500 is or a mutual fund. They don't know what compounding interest means. These basic things that if you don't even know how to manage your money, they don't even really budget at all, right?
Yeah. Can I just say something about
Yeah.
my friends? My friends, one of them owe $3,000 in credit cards. That
And that's all consumer debt,
Yeah.
by the way.
my other friend does not have savings. I asked him, "Do you have savings?" He's like, "I don't worry about that too much."
Yeah, think about that. I don't worry about savings. The number one thing you need as you get older is money.
These are people my age group. Of course, they're in kind of like a different scene as opposed to some of my business student friends, which they have a tight grip on that.
Well, maybe they have a tight grip. Maybe they
But
don't.
maybe they don't.
Right?
But the majority.
But think about
there.
it. As you're getting older, you basically need, like, for happiness, you need 3 things, in my opinion. 3 things for happiness. And which of these 3 things you have and don't have indicates how happy you'll be. Number 1, financial freedom, right? Financial stress sucks the joy out of your life. 2, health. Bad health sucks the joy out of your life.
Yeah.
And 3, relationships, right?
Yeah.
If you have all 3 of those things, you probably have a fighting chance for happiness. If you are financially, bereft, you're screwed in terms of happiness because you will always be stressed. Stress is a killer, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when I'm stressed, I can't be happy. When I'm not stressed, I can be happy, right? So think about your friends. I don't worry about money. You're setting yourself up for a lifetime of financial misery, right?
Yeah, it will probably bite him later.
Oh, Oh yeah, I mean, because eventually, if he ever has kids or if he has a house and a mortgage, I mean, shit, I get in my inbox, I get like 13 or 14 bills every month that I have to pay. 13 or 14 bills.
Wow.
I mean, when you got gas, you got electric, you got your mortgage, you got your phone, you got your internet.
Yeah.
You've got I own a few rental properties, so I've got multiple mortgages. You've got groceries that you have to pay. Life is expensive, and you need money to pay for that, or you're going to be stressed, and that means you're going to be miserable. So I would teach nutrition and staying fit. Don't get behind in that. You know what I mean? Be fit throughout your life. Teach your kid at 3 years old. Exercise is part of your life. Yeah. Nutrition is part of your life, so that it's in their brains, that deep part of their brain that they can't get rid of.
There's probably an average cost too to how much it's going to take to raise a children.
And they should know that.
A
parent should know that.
Yeah.
It's like you think you're getting money from the government to raise a kid, but that's not enough to raise a kid.
No.
I mean, shit, to raise one kid, when you include college tuition, which is ugly, even if you go to a state school, right? I mean, it's probably like, I don't know, $250,000 to raise a kid. Maybe more. I mean, I'm sure there's good stats on that, right?
Yeah, that should be on the wall.
Yeah, right. Cost this much. And that means you have to save now. You got to be saving all the time. And don't have too many kids, because ignore the fact that the planet's like getting crazy overpopulated. In 1900, we had 1.5 billion people on the planet. 100 years later, we have 8 billion people, right? So that means that we've increased by like 5 or 6 times, right?
Yeah.
Let's see, 1.5 goes to 3, goes to 4.5, goes to 6, goes to more than 5 times we've increased in 100 years, right?
I wonder what the projected population is in the next.
Well, it's got to settle somehow. I mean, if you just go by 5 times, that means in 100 years we'll have 40 million people on this planet, right? Jeez. So but ignore that. Ignore that. It's that parents need to give their children a fighting chance for happiness in this world and success. And society, we need it. We can't have like the Gulag Archipelago where kids are being raised by parents that just don't have, they might even be well-intentioned, but if they don't have the tools, they can't raise the kids in such a way that they could have a fighting chance for happiness and that they could be good citizens,
Yeah.
And by the way, that's another thing I train. So what we train on, you're training your kids, training course, you're training parents and kids from the time they're in utero on situations, right? On nutrition and staying fit, on financial literacy. Those are big things. But also being a good citizen, because you are in a society. And what do you want living next? Who do you want living next door to you? Somebody that's kind and respectful and doesn't have garbage all over their front yard. And I mean, the simple little things in life, that isn't, like parking on my driveway, I mean, they're not playing music super late at night. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're respectful. They're paying their taxes. Because here's the thing. If you don't pay your taxes, I have to, because somebody has to pay for everything, right? There's somebody paying for everything. If you're avoiding taxes with scams, that means I got to pay your taxes, right? Pay your student loans, right? Obey the laws, right? I mean, you get pulled over by the police, give them your license and registration. Don't steal, like basic stuff. Don't murder. Let's not commit murder. Let's avoid committing murder, right? And basically give them a mindset from infancy on that we're going to be good citizens, right? And by the way, let's have a little national pride. Would that be such a bad thing if people actually were like, happy about being part of our country?
Yeah.
And then kept current on things, so that when they're 18 and they can vote, they're used to keeping current. They understand issues, be educated. When I was a kid, my parents, it was not even a question of whether I'd go to college. Now, my dad was an orphan, right? He got the GI Bill. You know a little bit about that, or you're going to. Mm-hmm. And that saved him because he got an education. Then he drilled it into us. He had 5 kids. There's 5 of us. We all went to college. It wasn't even a question that we were going to do it. I'm not saying you have to go to college, by the way. Go get a trade. Yeah. Be an electrician, be a plumber. So anyway, as we were saying, is
your dad
educate them on the importance of building a career, right? Which requires some form of education. An apprenticeship is great. College could be great if you go and don't have student loans, right? Mm-hmm. But raising our kids to have these things in their mind. Another thing is basically being accountable. I had a guy doing my lawn last summer. He comes to me in the winter and he goes, I'm starting my business, 22-year-old guy, I really like him. And he says, I'm doing landscaping. I bought the equipment, so I hired him to do landscaping. And his commitment was he'd cut the lawn every week. I don't know if he had good parenting or what, but he would show up 2 weeks. Sometimes I thought he quit through the summer. And then he'd show up, a week and a half, 2 weeks later, act like nothing was wrong because and I talked to him one day and I said, this isn't the way you can build a business in this world, right? And I offered to give him some counseling, which he didn't take me up on. But so then this year he asked me if he could do it again. And I said, I really like you, but I can't have you do it again because you're not accountable. You have to be accountable. When you say you're going to do something, you have to follow through. But that starts when you're 5 years old, it's in your brain, accountability. And, basic general kindness, right? Being respectful and kind to people. I don't think everybody gets that in their brains. And, also avoiding addictions, it's everybody, some of us have addictive personalities. I think I might, but when you do, you have to avoid addictive situations. Don't take fentanyl, right?
Yeah.
It might be an obvious one, but if you don't raise your kids in such a way that they're actually a little bit fearful of trying drugs, teenagers go use drugs all the time. My daughters, they drank, but they didn't use drugs because I made them so afraid of addiction and what could happen because it could ruin your life, right? Fentanyl could ruin your life. Gambling could ruin your life. Many of these addictions, even social media, I read an article about one of the CTO, I think, at Facebook or one of those social media companies. He wouldn't let his kids go on social media until they were 17 years old.
Yeah.
He has a social media company, but he said this stuff's addictive. I'm not going to have my kids have their lives ruined over this.
And imagine what some of the laws we were suggesting or licensing and all that, what kind of impact that would have on the schools, because a lot of people are thinking, I don't want to send my kids to school because that's where you get exposed.
Oh, right. So imagine because this is the Gulag Archipelago. I'm sending my kids into a place where a lot of parents haven't raised their kids, so they're wild.
Yeah.
They're going to, and those are your influences, right?
And they get swayed by, oh, look at Jim. He's not whatever.
He's eating Frosted Flakes every day. And look at Mr. Colson. He's eating Frosted Flakes. Right. He's fine, right? Look, he's super popular guy.
That's when the rebellion comes in with the kids.
Right. So you're right. So it's not just what you're doing for your own kids, it's what you're doing for your community by having training. So again, licensing, I could be swayed toward it, right?
Yeah.
Certainly for different age groups. And certainly at a minimum, you have to have a certificate, a training certificate for parenting, and then you have to stick with it forever.
Yeah.
Or at least until your kids are, 21, right? And then, also, you had an interesting idea, which is also train parents and kids on home maintenance.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So that we're not so helpless. And by the way, who's pretty helpless? Me. I wish someone had trained me on home maintenance. I have a toilet in my downstairs bathroom that's been leaking. I finally just shut it off. I have to find time to go to Lowe's and get the piece and stick it in. But anyway, that's not a bad idea.
They used to teach that stuff, like you said.
Home ec and industrial. Yeah. I know.
Because people are clueless about that now.
And then financial literacy, to me, it goes beyond the parents then. Parents are doing it in the home, budgeting, scaring children about, your futures if you don't have, enough money to sustain yourself.
Yeah.
Make it so that you want to save. I'm afraid to go on Amazon and buy stuff I don't need. I mean, by the way, I am afraid of that.
Yeah.
Because I was raised in a very frugal household. My parents had no money. So we were very cautious about spending. And I'm afraid of consumer debt. I'm okay with investment debt. I mean, I have a few rental properties and I owe money on all of those. But consumer debt, I will never have a credit card balance out of fear.
You don't need it.
No, you shouldn't. Because if you don't, because in my generation, you saved up for stuff.
Yeah.
Now we don't save up for stuff. We buy the stuff and then pay it back on our credit cards, right?
Yeah.
That's dangerous.
Yeah.
One of my kids got into credit card debt, $1,500, and now she's scared straight. She will probably never not pay off her balance in the month again because it's terrifying to think. You said you have a friend that owes $3,000.
Yeah.
I've known people who have credit card debt of over $90,000. All these credit cards they're getting. They get a credit card, max it, get another one, max it, get another one. It's a death spiral. You'll never get out of that, right? So these are the things. So what we're thinking, okay, licensing is never going to happen. Okay. No way will people agree to making people get a license for children. But training, that could happen. The government could fund, sponsor training, and maybe you have to get a certificate. As a lawyer, I have to finish my continuing legal education every 2 years. I have to do like 24 credit hours that includes ethics every 2 years. I'm sure it's the same with engineers, accountants, and the medical profession. Why shouldn't that be the case with parenting?
We're not cavemen anymore. You know, this is entirely a different set of rules. This is like the concrete jungle. You know, you have accountability that you need.
Yeah, as parents, so that we create that in our kids.
Yeah.
So we won't get licenses. And by the way, I'm not saying if I'm for or against them, right? I mean, I'm not sure I think it's because here's the problem with licenses. I don't like people telling me what to do.
Right.
And I'm sure nobody else likes that either, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, I think it could be subject to abuse. You know, you get somebody in a licensing office that, I don't know, they're on a power kick,
Yeah.
or they have an agenda, you know, that they don't want any Democrats to get licenses. They don't want any Republicans to get licenses. You know, we want to raise all Republican babies, or we want to raise all Democrat babies.
Yeah.
So I can see how that's rife with problems, right? So I'm not saying we should do licensing.
You have a job, got a healthy diet. Okay, yeah. Oh, wait, you're a Democrat. Denied.
Yeah, exactly. Denied. Exactly. That's what I mean. So I'm sure that probably wouldn't work. But the next best thing might be training. And also training adults about the dangers of having a kid when you're 83.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's probably better in that case if you get a sperm donor for your young wife, right? So that you can still have the kid, I guess, except now the kid's going to have no dad. So, no, 83 is too old. 75, 74, too old, right? 60, too old, right? I mean, probably once you get out of your 40s, I think your childbearing days should
probably be okay.
come to an end,
Yeah.
just for the sake of the kids, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, to each their own. But if you do the training program, maybe parents will appreciate the genetic issues associated with having children at an old age, or the financial issues associated with having children at a young age, at a too young age. And I like your idea. Put the number on your wall.
Yeah.
It's $250,000 through this kid's life till they're out of the house.
Yeah, they always do videos about the animals needing adoption, right? Like, come rescue Jimmy. Show some kid,
Some kid
that's like, you know,
that has no chance.
no chance.
That no chance, right?
Out
I
of
find
the-
it
out of the-
hilarious almost and sad in a way that you can't rent a cat unless you, not rent. You can't
Rescue a
adopt
kid.
or rescue a
Yeah.
cat. Rescue a cat. In other words, this cat's in trouble.
Yeah.
No one's taking care of this cat, and they're going to block you because you have food from, you know, a cheap place instead of an expensive place.
Yeah.
That's a cat.
Yeah.
A cat in need.
Yeah.
Right? It's not even like a new kitten that just came out and has like 10 people that want it. And you're competing on who's going to be the best, you know, owner of that cat. You have a cat that nobody wants. Somebody walks up, I'll take that cat. Okay, well, let's see what you're going to feed the cat. And you're like, dude, I'm going to feed him something. What's it matter what I'm going to feed him? No, it's got to be nutritious. But then you can have a kid and don't worry about what you're going to feed that kid.
Yeah, that's such a sadness.
Yeah, so anyway, on a positive note, Chris, you were raised very well, right?
Yeah.
You got good parents.
You know, compared to a lot of people in this generation, I would say I got off pretty well.
Well, you seem good to me, Chris.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
It's a wrap.
All right.